Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the session. If you could do me a big favor and type a yes into the chat box to let me know if you can hear my voice. I just want to make sure the stream is going through. Go ahead and type a yes into the chat area. I think it's live, but I'm just double checking. Say hello in the chat. We've got a live chat going. We're streaming actually on multiple platforms here, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. So wherever you are, welcome. Tell me if you can hear me. Let me know. Yes. Okay. I see some yeses coming through. Also, let me know where you're joining us from. I'm broadcasting from the Miami area. So welcome. Hope it's the weather is all good where you are. We had some flooding here last week. Crazy storms in the South Florida area, specifically Fort Lauderdale. Anyway, my name is Paul Nowak. I am the founder and CEO here at Iris Reading. Actually, South Florida and the Miami area is not my hometown. My hometown is Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago. So welcome. I see Tess from Seattle. I see some people from New York. Someone from India. Hello from India. We see people all over the place in these kind of workshops. Of course, a lot of people are working remotely, going to school remotely, or wherever you are, welcome. I think you'll find today's session helpful. My name is Paul Nowak. I'm the founder and CEO here at Iris Reading. If you're not familiar with the work that we do here, we basically teach study skills, and the study skills that we teach are specifically reading related to help students read faster, to help them comprehend the material, because sometimes you could read something and get very little comprehension. You ever read a whole page of text and you look up like, I have no clue what I've been reading this whole time? Or it might not be a page, it could be like 5 pages before you catch yourself like, okay, I was spacing out there, I really got to go back. So we'll work on improving focus today and comprehension. Also, we teach memorization techniques. It's not going to be the focus of today's session. Or you can go to our website if you want to see some of the online courses we have on that at irisreading.com. Let me tell you what we're going to get into today. And you'll need a few materials here. There's just a couple of PDFs that you can download from the link you see on the screen here. So if you go to irisreading.com/YTS, that's where you can find links to the 2 PDFs we're going to be using. Now, don't start reading them yet, but this link will just forward you to a Dropbox link where there's a couple of downloads there. And we're going to use that to help measure our reading speed. So, of course, my goal today, and your goal should be, we want to make some sort of an improvement in our reading speed. We're shooting for an hour, just so you're aware in terms of timing. I will stick around afterwards if there are people with questions. You'll also have my contact information. By the way, my email is just paul@irisreading.com. I'll also send you some free supplemental materials. Oh, I see someone here joining us from Pakistan. Hello, off of LinkedIn. Good, I guess it would be evening for you. So it's morning over here in South Florida. Let's get into it. And one last reminder, we're going to be posting weekly content on our YouTube channel. We'll live stream every so often on LinkedIn. By the way, the LinkedIn area where we're live streaming from is just my LinkedIn personal profile. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just, I don't know, look for this face or some resemblance and my name here, Paul Nowak, and let me know you're in one of the workshops and I'm happy to connect with you. Or if you want to be introduced to someone in my network, I'm happy to connect people and put them in touch. I think you'll find today's session helpful, but go to YouTube if you want to see some of the the content that's going to be updated more regularly, I'd say. So here's what we're going to cover today. First off, how fast do you currently read? That's how we're going to measure our progress, of course, so we'll measure it to begin with. Also, how to improve your focus while reading. We all have the challenge of dealing with distractions, right? I grew up in a big family. I've got 5 brothers, and I'm one of the oldest. So when I was trying to study in high school, and of course in grade school, it was always very busy and loud in the house. I'm lucky I lived very close to a library, so I'd usually go to the library to get some focused work in. But even if you're sitting in a library on your own, we all have potential distractions, and some of you might even feel like you have trouble with attention, and things like ADHD are real things. So I want you to know, even if you have trouble with focus, that is an area that you can work on. Okay, it's a skill just like anything else, and any kind of a skill can be sharpened and improved. So we'll talk about this and also how to improve your comprehension. I know we've called this a speed reading and comprehension workshop. I don't want to overemphasize speed because we all know your reading speed doesn't matter unless you're actually comprehending the material. So we need to comprehend, and there are ways to improve your comprehension. We'll get into that today. Also, how to read faster on the computer screen. The average person, when they're reading in a digital manner, tends to read a little bit slower. It's actually, there was a study done a few years ago. They found it was about 32% slower on the screen as opposed to on, the printed page. So we got to work on that. We'll talk about improving that digital-based reading speed. And we'll talk about how to build up your speed with practice. Reading is a skill. Like we mentioned, focus is a skill. Well, you can improve on this, and there are drills that you can practice. We're going to actually do some drills today, and I think they'll help you improve. And I'll also teach you how you can do them on your own to continue improving beyond today's session. And we'll talk about how to read more complex information, because it's one thing to read a book like this. This is not incredibly technical material here. Actually, I have a book called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. This is kind of like a modern day psychology classic from Robert Cialdini, and great book. I'd highly recommend it. And but that's not extremely technical material. I mean, if I was in school and I'm studying advanced level physics, that's a different matter. Much more complex. How do we deal with that information? So our focus as readers needs to be in three key areas. Speed, we want to read at a decent speed, and we also want to get comprehension, obviously, and we need retention as well. So I want to draw a distinction between retention and comprehension because they're not exactly the same. There's a subtle difference. Comprehension is what are you understanding at the present moment while you're reading it. Retention is what do you remember later on after you've closed the book and maybe get quizzed on it or tested, or maybe somebody just asked you, hey, what was that book about? And you got to rely on your recall. Sometimes your comprehension could be good in the moment, and then you could end up having horrible retention, right? We all forget things, but we can improve all these areas. Actually, real quick, I want to give you an idea how I got involved teaching speed reading. I learned it during my freshman year of college from one of my professors. And although I was a good student in high school, but when you get to college, it's much harder, of course. And I was falling behind in every class. And I really felt like, okay, it's impossible to keep up with all this reading. And my problem was not only going to school full time, but I was also working on the weekends, and I was also on the basketball team. So this stretched my schedule thin. And I had one of my classes where I was meeting with a professor during his office hours, and I was kind of complaining to him, like, look, there's not enough. How is anybody keeping up with all this reading? And my professor told me that I should look into improving my reading speed and maybe take a speed reading class. And my professor told me he took a speed reading class when he was in college, and it helped him out quite a bit. So he suggested I do the same. And I was looking around. I was going to school in Chicago. I told you that's where I was born and raised. That's also where I went to school at the university level. And I could not find any courses on speed reading at the time. I found some software about it. I found some books on it, but I wanted to take an actual class and learn how to read faster. So I went back to my professor and said, look, I can't find any classes, but you apparently know how to speed read. How does it work? Can I come in during your office hours and maybe work on it? And he agreed that I could come in during office hours and he would train me. So first session, he measures my speed. I'm at 190. So 190 words per minute is around average. I was actually kind of relieved to know that I was average, because for years I thought I was a really slow reader for many years, because I'd always run out of time on those reading tests, where you have a passage to read, answer these questions. I'd always run out of time, so I had this bias in my mind that I must be a slow reader, and I was always very good at math, so I'm like, I must be just more mathematically inclined. Maybe reading is not a strength of mine. So when I found out I was 190 words a minute, I was so happy because I thought I was a slow reader for a long time. Now, my professor immediately shut this down. He's like, you shouldn't be happy with average. You should be above average, especially if you're going to go to graduate school. You're going to get way more reading than you do now. That was my freshman year of college. And he measured my comprehension with the standardized test. I got a terrible 60% because I did not finish it in time. We went through about 10 hours of training, not in one day, but over a few weeks. And I was making progress. Just to give you an idea, over that time period, I went from 190 words a minute, beginning point, to 830 words per minute by the end of it. And as far as comprehension goes, first test was 60%, next test was 83%. And I hate to sound cliche and call this a life-changing experience, but if you're reading 4 times faster, that changes a lot for you. For me, it was I was able to catch up with my reading, keep up with it. Freshman year, I get a perfect GPA, all A's. I didn't maintain that because college gets harder after freshman year, but this really helped me juggle work, school. Actually, my sophomore year, I had to start working full time. And the reason was my parents were having financial issues at the time, and I wanted to help them out. And I didn't want to quit school, so I was going to school at night. The school I graduated from was DePaul University. It's in Chicago, and they have a lot of evening courses you can take. So I'd take classes from 6 p.m. to 9:15 at night, and I would work during the day from 8 o'clock to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if I was still reading at that 190 word a minute rate, that would be impossible. I would not be able to juggle full-time 40 hours a week of work and also full-time school and graduate in 4 years with a decent GPA. So this helped me a lot. The way I started Iris reading was kind of by accident. It happened during my senior year. I took an entrepreneurship class, and the teacher wanted everyone to come up with their own business idea, write a business plan, and so forth. So I didn't have any other ideas at the time, and I always had it in the back of my mind that, you know what, this should have been taught to me in high school. How come more students don't know about this? So I started a little speed reading tutoring service on campus, and I would just post flyers around campus. Students would contact me, and I would teach them one-on-one on the weekends because I already had a job during the week. And one of the things I found was I just really, really loved teaching. And it was too late to change majors at that point. I was a finance major. I was already working full time in the trading world, dealing with the stock market, commodity markets, currency markets, bonds, things like that. And I kept working full time in the trading world, but little by little, this started turning into an organization. We've done this in over 100 cities now. We've done this for employees at NASA, Google, LinkedIn. We've done this for people in the Army, the Navy, firms outside of the US as well, and a lot of universities from Stanford, Harvard, other Ivy League schools to community colleges. And I think you'll find this helpful. I just wanted to give you some background on where I'm coming from so you have an idea. And here's what we need to think about first. It's how do most people read? Most people, if you see the paragraph on the screen here, most people when they're reading, you see this green dot bouncing around. This is how most people read with their eyes. You're going word by word. Of course, sometimes you got to go back, like, hold on, I didn't understand any of that. Let me go back and reread. So basically, there's a few old reading habits. These are old habits that need to change if we're going to start reading faster and more efficiently. And think about this. When was the last time you learned how to read? For most people, the last time they learned how to read was the first time they learned how to read. That's a bit of a problem if you think about it, because it's not like that with other subjects. When was the last time you learned history? It wasn't when you were like 4 or 5, 6 years old. When was the last time you learned something in the sciences? Again, it wasn't when you were in kindergarten or first grade. Same thing with math and other subjects, but with reading, which underlies much of the learning we do, it's one of those things that's taught to people just at one point in their life. So you can kind of think of this kind of a workshop and training yourself as a way to upgrade your skills. That's all. It doesn't mean you're a bad reader. We're going to measure your reading speed in a few moments here. You might find out that you're above average. And even if you're average or below, I don't care where you're starting. All that matters is progress, okay? So some of the old reading habits we got to change. One of them is called fixation. It's something your eyes do. Have you noticed this? You fixate on a word-by-word basis, right? Going word by word. Now, it's fine. You can read this way. I mean, that's how we're taught. But you're perfectly capable now of reading groups of words to an extent. I mean, not 20 words at a time, but like 2, 3, 4 words, that shouldn't be a problem. Actually, you already read groups of words when you're in a car and you're driving around. Let's say you were taking a road trip to New York City and you saw an exit sign on the highway that said New York City, 3 words. Would you look at each word individually, like fixated with your eyes? Probably not. You would be fixated on the road, and when the sign comes up in the corner of your eye, you would just fixate on the sign for a split of a moment and then fixate back on the road. You wouldn't fixate on New York City and then fixate back. That's where we're reading groups of words. But the funny thing is, most people wouldn't do it. If the words New York City were buried in the middle of a paragraph, most people would go New York City one by one. So this is one of the habits we got to change. Another habit that's got to change is something called regression, and we've kind of touched on this. This is going back to reread. We've all spaced out and zoned out. Let me know in the chat if this happens to you, where you just like, all of a sudden your mind wanders off. You're thinking of totally different things. They have a name for this, by the way. When you're actually progressing through the text, like you're looking at the text line by line, and you think you're reading. You might even be turning pages and progressing page by page. And then eventually you catch yourself like, hold on, wait a minute. I need to go back because none of this is sinking in. This is, of course, called regression. You know, some people will do it 25% of the time while they're reading, and it eats up a lot of time, makes us less efficient. So we know what we need to do here. We got to improve our focus so we don't go back as often. But let me give you a quick little tip here on how to avoid some regression, and that is, you know, sometimes people will read a sentence, it didn't make sense, they read it again, still didn't make sense. Have you ever read the same stupid sentence like 7 or 8 times, and you're like, why is this not making sense? Well, let's think of the possibilities here. One possibility is maybe it just went over my head and I wasn't paying attention. Not good. That's one possibility. A second possibility, this happens sometimes, maybe that sentence is not clearly written. It's possible, but you know what, this was published. I assume an editor looked at this, and I assume it should be well written. But there is a third possibility, and this happens very often. Isn't it true that sometimes this sentence doesn't make sense until I read the next sentence or the rest of the paragraph? And actually, that happens fairly often when you're reading. Sometimes the author doesn't give you all of the information in one sentence. Sometimes you just got to read a little further. So what I'm trying to get at here is, don't go back after one sentence. Try to push through the rest of the paragraph. And if you get to the end of the paragraph and it didn't make sense or you didn't understand it well, then if you finish a paragraph and you didn't understand, you should definitely go back and reread, but not after one sentence. It's kind of like when you watch movies. Have you ever watched a movie that doesn't really make sense at the beginning, like the first 5 minutes? Do you stop the movie and say, you know what, well, maybe I should rewatch that scene because maybe if I watch it again, I'll understand it. If you rewatch that scene, you still wouldn't get it. You could watch that scene a million times, but what usually happens in movies and even in reading, you got to go a little further, right? Once you get to the middle, or maybe even sometimes the end of the movie, that's where you realize, oh, okay, the ending explained what happened at the beginning. So just keep that in mind when you're reading. Now, there is a third old reading habit. This is one of the harder ones to change. And you probably remember. Remember when you were first learning how to read, you had to get up in front of class and you had to read out loud. How many of you remember this terrible experience, reading out loud? Yes? I used to hate reading out loud because English is not my first language. My first language is actually Polish. Both of my parents are immigrants from Poland. I was born and raised in Chicago, but I grew up speaking only Polish. So when I had to read out loud, I used to hate it because I was always messing up on words because it was a new language. The good news is you don't have to read out loud forever. Eventually your teacher says, don't read out loud anymore. Say the word silently in your head. Read to yourself. And they call that sub-vocalization. Sub-vocalization is that voice you hear in your head while you're reading. You may have noticed that you hear voices in your head while you're reading. It doesn't mean you're crazy if you're hearing your voice in your head. It's your voice. Yeah, by the way, if you're hearing other voices in your head, that's a separate issue. But this habit of sub-vocalization places some limits on our reading speed. And it's not as easy as just turning it off. By the way, speaking of your reading speed, we're going to talk a little more about changing this habit and the others, but we still haven't measured our reading speed. So I'd like to do that right now. If you could please refer to the first handout. It's speedtest1.pdf. You could, again, find it at irisreading.com/YTS. I'm going to put that link in the chat, irisreading.com/YTS. Go there. It's also in the description of the video below on YouTube, but make sure you have that. It looks like this. So we're going to read for a quick little minute here. Now, before you start reading, I want to just give you some basic instructions. Read the way you normally would. Don't go faster than usual. Don't go slower than usual. I want you to get a real idea of what your speed is. And I'm asking you to download this. Of course, you could print it out if you want. It's a quick page of text. But if your screen is large enough, and you could read this text that's on my screen, I'll have it up during the minute so you could read directly from this slide. But you might need to expand and maximize the window. So it's probably on the lower right corner of this video. Expand it if you want to read from my screen. Otherwise, if it's too small, because maybe you're joining us from, I don't know, a phone or from a tablet or a smaller screen, you might want to download it instead. So you could have it zoomed in to whatever feels comfortable. Now I got a timer here. Sounds like this. And at the end of the minute of reading, you'll hear my timer go off. And at that point, I just want you to stop reading. And you'll look at the line where you stopped. These numbers on the side are going to help us figure out what your speed was. Okay, so just read the way you normally would. I am going to disable my webcam during this minute, so goodbye temporarily. I will also turn off my mic so you don't have any background noise coming in from my end. But like I said, we're just going to read for 1 minute and read the way you normally would. Here is the article. Go ahead and begin reading. All right, that was a minute of reading. Take a look where you stopped and let's figure out your reading speed. And if you want, you can share it in the comments. You don't have to. I'll leave that up to you if you want. You could keep it to yourself, of course, but let's find out. Well, by the way, I should give some context here. These numbers tell you how many words are to the end of that line. So if you stopped on this line right here, the word even, that's exactly 249 words from the beginning of the article to this word right here. Now, if you finish the paragraph, that extra word makes it 250. Or if you stopped, I don't know, somewhere over here and you didn't read the last 2 words, well, just subtract 2 from that number. So write that number down. It's very important that you write the number down or take a digital note of it so you know what your starting point was, because we'll measure your speed again later. And I'd like you to, if you could do me a big favor, if you go to irisreading.com/S1 or through that QR code, what you can do is add it to a survey where we keep track of thousands and thousands of these data points. So if you could enter your speed there, and then there's an area that says estimate your comprehension. That's just kind of a guesstimate, 0 to 100%. How did you feel your comprehension was? We don't have time to go over a full-blown standardized reading test, especially based on just 1 minute of reading. Doesn't make sense. So you can kind of guesstimate it. Like if you felt, you know what, this was easy reading, 80%. Or you might say, my comprehension was so-so. You might say 70%. If you felt like your comprehension was bad, maybe you got distracted, you might say 60, 50, or maybe you want to be precise and say 72.3%. Anyway, it's just an estimate, very subjective here. This is a lot more objective, what your speed was. So enter that information if you don't mind there. And also, here's the average. The average reading speed is 150 to 250. So 150 to 250, that's where most people tend to fall. But I want to give some context on this. This average, it's based on material that's kind of middle of the road, not too easy, not too hard. I think all of us would agree this material is the material you just read. It's not advanced level physics. and it wasn't super easy either. It's not like a children's book. So if we have to categorize things into 3 levels, like easy, medium, hard, this material that we just did was medium level as far as difficulty goes. And this is an average reading speed for medium level material. Also, this average does not take into account education level. So for college educated adults, it is a little bit higher. It's 200 to 300. So you can compare to this or this. Also, these averages are based on, and by the way, for those of you sharing in direct messages or in the chat or comments, thank you for sharing your info. You don't have to, but if you want, you can. These are the averages. One other thing to note, the obvious, is your reading speed is more like a range. Sometimes you go faster, sometimes you go slower. It depends on what we're reading, right? If you read some difficult material, you got to slow it down. You read something easy, you're going to speed up. So whatever your range is, it might be 100 words a minute on the low end, 300 words a minute on the high end. I want to help you take that range and move it higher. Okay, that's the goal. Or to take the range and expand the range, because you know what? Sometimes it makes sense to read slow. When I'm editing and I'm checking for like grammatical errors, things like that, I go slower. When I'm reading to my daughter, she's 7 years old, I will read at a slower pace, of course, right? Because I'm reading a story. But if I'm reading for informational material or novels, I'll read faster. What if you're reading something that's requires reflection, right? I mean, people sometimes have to read something and they got to sit on it and think like, huh, how does that apply to my life maybe? Or sometimes you read something and you just got to reflect. So keep in mind, it doesn't always make sense to go faster. Sometimes it makes sense more to go slower. All right, so on the screen, I told you people read a little slower. It can be more frustrating reading on the screen. So the average is closer to 136 words a minute on the screen. Now, remember we talked about this habit, sub-vocalization? So here's the problem with this and what it comes down to. You don't necessarily have to say a word to understand what it means. I'll give you an example of when you're reading, but you're not saying words in your head. When you see a stop sign, do you say stop in your head? Probably not. You see a stop sign and it registers, right? Now, the problem with this habit is if you're saying every single word in your head, doesn't that mean you're going to read about as fast as you talk? And that's a problem because your talking speed, there's a limit, right? You can only talk so fast. Now, some people talk faster than others, sure, but even a fast talker, they're going to be restricted by their talking speed. But what about instead, what about your thinking speed? You can think much faster than you can talk, right? Actually, our tagline at Iris Reading is reading at the speed of thought. And it's because you're perfectly capable of going at a faster rate, at more of a thinking speed rate than a talking speed rate. So this is why we got to change this habit. And I do want to make mention of one other thing in case if anybody's ever looked into speed reading before, some people get hung up on this habit of sub-vocalization and they think that they need to get rid of sub-vocalization, like eliminate it. That's not going to be the case. All the research I've looked at shows you cannot eliminate sub-vocalization, but you can reduce it. So here's what I mean by reducing it. When I read, I still sub-vocalize, but I don't sub-vocalize each and every single word. So if I had a sentence like, the boy jumped over the fence, in my head, I might just say boy jump fence in my head. The rest of the words, I don't say them, but I want you to know this does not mean I'm skipping words. You don't want to skip words because a word, if you skip the wrong word, it could totally change the meaning of a sentence. What's happening here is I'm not skipping words, I'm just not saying all of the words. Just like when you see a stop sign. You don't say it, but it doesn't mean you skipped the word. You still saw the word and it just registers. So we got to change this habit. All these habits we got to work on. Easier said than done, but there are some ways we can start working on them. First, let's talk about, and I forgot to mention this, the average reading speed is exactly the same as the average talking speed. Why is that? Well, it's because people sub-vocalize. And if you're saying all the words in your head, then yes, you will read about as fast as you talk. Average talking speed is 150 to 250. That's why a lot of people are stuck in that range. I know some of you here might be above average. If you're in the 300s or more, what that means is you're not saying all the words in your head. How do you know this? You could do a simple test. You could do this later on if you want. Try reading out loud for 1 minute, like talking out loud for a minute. See how far you get on that article here. Like if you started from the beginning and just read out loud, like last time I tried this, I got like 210 words a minute or so. That's like my talking speed. Again, that's around the average of average talking speed. Even if I tried going really fast, maybe I could get close to 300 words a minute talking, but I can't see myself talking 400 words a minute. It's just not possible for me. And actually, no, maybe if someone's an auctioneer, right? You know, people that do auctions, they talk really fast. Or you ever see like pharmaceutical commercials where at the end there's some disclaimer and they say it really fast so you don't hear it? Those people are talking faster than average, but again, still a limit. So let's first go over how we can improve our concentration, because this is like something that we can use for a quick win. When I say a quick win, I mean something simple that can immediately give us a faster speed. So how do we improve our concentration? The easiest way to do that when you are reading in an actual book is to start using your hand or pen or your finger as a guide. So going like this, or your whole hand, or some people prefer to use a pen, and that's fine too. But the idea here is you're creating motion on the page. And it turns out your eyes are naturally attracted to motion. Anything that moves around gets our attention. That's how we're wired as human beings. So you want to create some motion on the page, but I want to give you real quick, because if you took any other speed reading program, they tell you to do this, but a lot of places do not tell you why. There's some science behind it. The science is, it has everything to do with the way that your eyes move. Okay, there are two types of eye movements that all human beings have. One is called a saccadic eye movement, and the other is called a smooth pursuit. So what's the difference between saccadic and smooth pursuit? These are reactions that your eyes make to movement. If something is moving around, your eyes will move in a smooth pursuit. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Now, if things are not moving around, like if you're reading like this, or if you're just looking around a room and nothing is moving, in the room that I'm in right now, nothing's moving around. If I just look around, my eyes will move in a saccadic fashion because nothing is moving. Let me show you what that looks like. Here's a saccadic eye movement. Notice those little stops. They're very quick. Like a quick stop and go. All right, I'll show you a smooth pursuit. Much smoother. See that? That's your eyes reacting to movement, whether somebody's going like this, or if you're looking at a car that's driving down the road, your eyes move that way. Or if you're using your hand or pen to guide your eyes will move in a smooth pursuit. Let me show you them side by side, saccadic and smooth pursuit. Okay, left and right. Oops, sorry. So left side and the other side. Okay, so you can definitely tell a difference, right? Now it turns out the eye movement on the right, the smooth pursuit, this lends itself to better focus. In other words, you will pay more attention to things that move around, so much so that your eyes actually move differently. You won't feel it because our eyes are not super heavy, but the smooth pursuit eye movement, that's what's happening when you're creating motion on the page. And that's why you want to use your hand, finger, or a pen to guide your eyes. Now I realize this is not practical when we're reading on the screen, right? When you're reading on the screen, especially if you have a touch screen like your phone, it's not very practical to use your finger, or I guess I could use a back of my pen if I don't mind touching my screen, or a mouse, right? We could use a mouse, but there's still limitations to that. I'm on a laptop right now. It's a mouse pad. I don't have much leeway, and I can only go left to right so much. It would be easier with an external mouse, but let's talk about a different way we could approach reading on the screen. We're going to take some material. Let's take some sample reading material from The Onion. Not sure if you're familiar with this website, The Onion. If you're not familiar with it, this is America's finest news source, as you can see here. And if you're not familiar with The Onion, you are in for a treat, because we're going to read this article right here. So injured birthday clown taken behind bouncy house to be shot. So we're going to read this. Lucky for you, it's only a quick paragraph. And we're going to read this article by using a free speed reading tool that we created here at Iris Reading, and that is Accelerator. If you go to accelerator.com, that's where you can find it. I will post that link in the chat in a few moments here, but let me show you how it works to begin with. So all you got to do is copy and paste your text. As you can see, I've already copy and pasted it right here. I click begin, and then I click read. When you click read, the words are going to be blinking on the screen at whatever speed you set in the program. Now I've got it set right now to 200 words per minute, which is again around the average, but we'll bump it up. First, let's see what the average speed looks like. And then I know for some of you, you're going to be like, hey, you know what? I think I could go faster than that. And then we'll go faster than that. So let me turn off my webcam for a moment. I want you to focus in the middle of the screen. We're going to read this short article, injured birthday clown taken behind bouncy house to be shot. Okay, let's try it out. Here we go. All right, so that was 200 words per minute. Let's try going faster. We'll take another article here. So we're going to take this one, also from The Onion. Financial experts recommend just waiting until chaos is law of the land. All right, so again, quick little paragraph. We copy and paste it into the program. We click begin. Now let's bump up the speed from 200 to 250. I'm going to change it in the settings here. It's the setting right at the top, words per minute. Change that to 250. Hit save. Also, you may have noticed it's blinking 3 words at a time. That's a setting change you can change right over here under the chunk size. But we're going to leave it at 3 words a minute just to demonstrate the point that, look, you can read 3 words at a time. Let's try it. We're going to go a little bit faster here. We got 250 words per minute, and we're just going to read this silly article right here. Financial experts recommend just waiting until chaos is law of the land. Let's try it out. Here we go. All right, so that was 250 words per minute. Let's try going even faster. So I'm from Chicago, so we're going to use this article right here from The Onion. Snowstorm in Chicago delays hundreds of morning murders. Again, another short article. We copy, we paste it into the program, we click begin. We're going to bump up the speed to 300 now. And there are some keyboard shortcuts at the bottom here. You see them? What you can do is you can use the up and down arrow keys to increase or decrease your speed by 25. If you need to go back and pause the program, you can just hit your space bar. So that's like your play and pause button. And if you got to go back, you just use your left arrow key to go back. Or you could use the right arrow key if you want to skip ahead, and there's other keyboard shortcuts, as you can see here. So we're going to go through this article. I'm going to hit the up arrow key twice, up, 2 times. You see it's 300 now. We're going to read this article right here. Snowstorm in Chicago delays hundreds of morning murders. And let's see if you can still keep up at 300 words per minute. Here we go. Okay, so I think you guys get the idea how this works. We're going to go back to the slides and talk about some other strategies, but there's definitely a deeper dive you can do on the settings here and to optimize this for yourself. Actually, maybe we'll do a live stream in the future on how to optimize this as a training tool. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. So that was Accelerator, this free speed reading tool. We are also working on turning it into an iPhone, Android app, also a plugin for the browsers. We'll keep you posted if you go to accelerator.com at any point. That's where you can find updates on this program. Now, how do you get better at anything? I think all of us know the answer to this question. The way you get better at anything is practice. Now, when we're talking about practice as it relates to reading, if you want to improve your speed, there are some exercises you can do. We call them speed drills. And we're going to practice some speed drills right now. The goal of a speed drill is to purposely go faster than you would normally read. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to take material you already read. Remember this article, Age of Distraction? You already read the first minute of it. Remember, we measured your reading speed. The first drill is going to be 40 seconds. Here is what you got to do. You got to start at the beginning of this article, and you have to reread that minute of reading that you did in 40 seconds. Okay, from the top to the line that you got up to. Maybe you got up to here. Maybe you got up to here. Maybe you got further. Maybe you got down here. You got to get to the spot you read up to originally in 40 seconds. So one other thing I want you to know, if you have this printed out, definitely use your hand, finger, or pen as a guide. You could also do it on your screen if you want to. I'm going to leave that up to you. I don't want anyone destroying their screens. I mean, I could use my pen here because the back of the pen doesn't really scratch. It's got a smooth surface. You could use that. I guess you could use a mouse. You don't have to use your hand, finger, or pen if you're reading on the screen. I'll leave that up to you. I don't want to force anybody to do anything. But the idea here, at the very least, what you have to do, you have to go faster than you would normally read. That's the whole goal of a speed drill. Purposely go faster. Now, it shouldn't be too hard because, you know what, we already read the first minute of this article, so of course I'll go faster. That's precisely the point. I want you to get used to seeing words faster. So I am going to turn off my webcam here, goodbye, and I'll turn off my mic during the drills, but I've got 40 seconds on the clock here. Make sure you have the article in front of you, or you're going from my shared screen here, and you got 40 seconds to make it to the line that you read up to. Okay, ready, set, and go. All right, that was 40 seconds. If you got through the material you previously read, very good. We're going to make the drill just a little more challenging, 35 seconds now, a little less time, but you got to do the same thing. You got to start at the beginning. You got to get to the line that you read up to, wherever that may be, in 35 seconds. So go a little bit faster than what you did previously. Okay, we got 35 seconds on the clock. Start at the beginning and make sure you're going faster than you would normally read. Ready, set, and go. All right, that was 35 seconds. If you got there, very good. And now we're going to do 30 seconds. So the same exact thing, you got to go faster than usual. And the speed now that you got to go at is about double your normal reading speed. Now, what we're doing here is basically skimming. It doesn't count as normal reading. You haven't doubled your reading speed, obviously. We're just moving our eyes faster. We're skimming at double our reading speed. So you got to get from the top to the line that you originally read up to. So remember that 60 seconds of reading we did at the beginning, that minute. You got to get through it in half the time or further. By the way, if you get to your line early, you just continue reading from where you left off. But we got 30 seconds now. You got to skim through all the text you previously read. Let's try it out. Ready, set, and go. All right, that was 30 seconds. If you got there, awesome. Let's make the drill even more challenging. Instead of getting to the line that you read up to, I want you to get all the way to the end of the passage down here. And I'm going to give you more time. I'm going to give you a very generous minute and 30 seconds. Now, that's not too generous. I'm purposely giving you a short period of time. And I realize for, just about all of us, a lot of these lines here have not yet been read. So what I want you to do, since this is a speed drill, you can kind of equate this to skimming. I want you to skim all the text, even the text you didn't read earlier. Skim it. Go faster than usual. Your comprehension is going to be terrible through this material. I'm just warning you, that's okay when we're doing a speed drill. In a little bit, we'll shift our attention to comprehension, but right now, let's prioritize speed. You got to get through all the text you see on your screen. If you get there early, go back to the beginning, keep doing the drill till time is up. Let's try it out. A minute and 30 seconds. Ready, set, and go. Halfway. Okay. If you got all the way to the bottom, very, very good. We're going to do one final drill on this passage, a minute and 15 seconds. Okay, try your best to skim through all the text. Comprehension doesn't matter so long as you're going faster than usual. I want you to get used to seeing words faster than usual. After we do this, we're going to jump back to comprehension and we'll talk about tips for comprehension. But right now, focus on speed. You got a minute and 15 seconds to get through all the text. Last one. Ready, set, and go. Halfway. All right, that was it. Minute 15. If you got there, awesome. Let's go back to normal reading. So we're not doing a drill anymore. I want you to refer to a new handout, speedtest2.pdf. I'm going to have it on my screen here. You see the How Distraction Hurts Creativity. It's by the same author from the same book, but you can find all those handouts here, irisreading.com/YTS. Now, make sure you have that handout in front of you because we're going to begin reading in a few moments here. Here it is on my screen. I want you to read normally. Normally meaning not too fast, not too slow. Go at whatever speed feels comfortable enough that you can understand it. Okay, we're going to read for a minute and then I'll stop you. But like I said, read for good comprehension. You're not going too fast or too slow. Okay, so here's the article. Hopefully you're ready to read. Ready, set, and go. All right, take a look at the line where you stopped and figure out what your speed was. And I'm curious to know if you made an improvement. I mean, we only did a handful of drills, but sometimes a little bit of practice goes a long way. If you made an improvement, let us know in the comments. You could let us know where you started, where you ended. You don't have to, I'll leave that up to you, but put your speed. You can also, this is why we have this success baby over here. If you made an improvement, awesome. And don't worry, we still have more to cover. We've got comprehension to go over. So enter your speed here. If you want to update our data, we like to keep track of these data points, how fast people are reading over a period of time. So you can go irisreading.com/S1. You can enter your speed there. You can also put an estimate of your comprehension, and you can get to that link by scanning the QR code as well. But if you made an improvement, great. Let's talk about how these drills work. I like to compare them to being on the highway. You know, when you're on the highway, you're going faster than usual. And let's say, well, what happens when you get off the highway? When you get off the highway, doesn't it feel kind of slow? Now, why does it feel so slow? Because you got used to going a lot faster, right? So if you're going 70 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour and you get off the highway, now 40 or 50 does not feel that fast. Same thing goes with reading. When we're doing the drills, it's like being on the highway. You might be going double your normal reading speed. When you get off the highway or when you stop doing the drills and you reset, and you'll be like, you know what, this does not feel as fast as it used to. And let's couple that with how we improve comprehension. Here's a simple way. We'll start with something simple and then we'll get a little more detailed. To improve comprehension, change up your speed. Sometimes you got to slow down, sometimes you got to speed up. Let me give you an example. Again, to borrow the analogy from driving, you don't always drive the same speed. If you're going to make a turn like this, you'll probably slow it down. When should we slow down and speed up when we're reading? And here's just an example article. This is not one of the materials. I just have it displayed on the screen. We have this article, India's Skills Famine. If you're reading this, or not just this, practically any kind of material, you can apply this strategy. The idea is that you should slow down on the first sentence of each paragraph and then speed up after that. Why would we slow down on the first sentence of each paragraph? I think you already know the answer. First sentence of a paragraph is usually, not always, but usually, the main idea. So I slow down here, and then I speed up a little bit. Slow down on the first sentence, speed up. Let me zoom in on that first paragraph so you can get an idea. It reads, the economic transformation of India is one of the great business stories of our time. Interesting. I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to run with it. I'm getting my details. I get to the end of a paragraph. I'm going to slow it down on the next paragraph on the first sentence. You see it reads here, but India has run into a surprising hitch on its way to superpower status. Its inexhaustible supply of workers is becoming exhausted. Interesting. Now I'm going to speed up. Next paragraph. How is this possible in a country that every year produces 2.5 million college graduates and 400,000 engineers? Interesting. Now I speed up. So slow down, speed up. Same thing here. There was a time when many economists believed that post-secondary education didn't have much impact on economic growth. You see how all these first sentences are giving you a lot of really, it's general information, but this is helpful. Look, the irony of the current situation is that India was once considered to be overeducated. That's a weird statement, right? How could a country be overeducated? It's a good thing to be overeducated. Now we get our details, right? And then the next paragraph, since the Second World War, the countries that have made successful leaps from developing to developed status have all poured money, public and private, into education. Interesting. Now we speed up. Next paragraph. India has taken tentative steps to remedy its skills famine. The current government has made noises about doubling spending on education, and a host of new colleges and universities have sprung up since the mid-1990s. I wanted to read all those first sentences out loud because the first sentence, just to demonstrate the point, we all know that the first sentence is usually the main idea, or if you want to call it a topic sentence. But changing your speed forces you to pay more attention. Now, there's one other reason I read the first sentence of each paragraph out loud to you, and that is to demonstrate another very important point. If you were going to read this article now, wouldn't you read it faster with better comprehension? And why is that? Because we read the first sentence of each paragraph first. You know it's about India, a shortage of skilled labor. They're talking about the economy, education. So if you were going to read this now, I'm sure you would read it faster. And this is leading to a very important speed reading strategy, and that is before you read anything, you should always inspect what you read. And when I say inspect what you read, I mean get familiar with it. How you do that depends on the structure of your material, but like a one-page article like this, the way you inspect is very simple. Read the first sentence of each paragraph, get all your main ideas first, now read the material. You'll read it faster now. You'll have better comprehension. What about when you're reading something more complex? Something more detailed, like a textbook chapter or a very technical report. The way you inspect the material, and this applies to chapters, reports, journal articles, you start with the introduction, and then you read the headings and subheadings, and then you read the boldface words, things in italics. You might have charts, tables, diagrams. I'm just reading the titles. I'll read my conclusion. Sometimes there are questions at the end of a chapter. I would read those. But here's how that applies to, here's a textbook chapter from kind of like a Finance 101 textbook. I put a big red box around this because this is basically the intro. It doesn't say introduction, but sometimes your chapters will just say introduction or objectives or abstract, executive summary. We read all that introductory material, and then here's page 2. You see all these red arrows? That's where my eyes are going when I'm inspecting. I'm reading the headings, boldface words, subheadings. Over here, I'm only reading the title of this table, and then I'm skipping to the next page. So really, this is a casual way to just kind of flip through your chapter, getting familiar with it, looking at headings and subheadings. If you don't have any headings and subheadings, read the first sentence of each paragraph. But I would not do that if it was structured like this. I would be looking at headings, subheadings, boldface words. Read the conclusion. Go back to the beginning. And I already read this, so if now I'm done inspecting, I'm going to read, and I'm going to read from here. And now I'm going to get my details. Even if this is complex information, I'm giving myself an edge by inspecting the material first. So this leads us to what we would call the IRIS method. IRIS is actually not only the name of our organization, but it's an acronym for how you would approach reading material and really understand it well. It starts with an inspection, and then, of course, second step is to read and get your detail. After you're done reading, a quick thing you can do is inquire, basically ask questions about what you just read. Questions can be things like, what are the biggest takeaways from what I just read? Other questions could be, what do I got to remember for the test? Or what do I need to memorize? When you ask questions, questions help focus the mind. And this is just a moment of reflection, really. You're done reading something. Most people, when they're done reading, they're like, okay, I'm done. And that's it. It's a better idea to stop for a moment and think to yourself, okay, what are the most important takeaways? What do I have to, maybe I'm reading because I got to do a presentation on this. I would be like, okay, what do I need to include from what I read in my presentation? Or what do I need to memorize? And that's leading to the final step of store. How am I going to store this information? Now, we don't have time to go over like memorization techniques. We have a course that goes into a deep level on memorization. You can check that out on our website, irisreading.com. But basically, if you're trying to get faster, you could do speed drills at the end of this process. So here's the goal and what you can do. And we have a speed reading mastery course on our website that dives deeply into other ways to speed up. And we do a lot of drills, not just this drill, but a lot of drills to improve speed. But when you're doing drills like this, you want to go at about double your normal speed. So that means if you're reading at 200, you practice at 400. So eventually you'll climb up to something like 250. If you're reading at 250, you practice at 500. So you can get to 300. And when I say get to these higher numbers, I mean like reading with comprehension at those higher levels. Remember, it's like being on the highway. If you're going 70 miles an hour, all of a sudden 40 doesn't feel that fast anymore. So the way you do it is you got to time yourself when you're reading. So if I'm reading chapter 5 in my book, okay, how long, after I inspect, how long did it take me to read it? Maybe it took me 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to inquire. I'm going to do a speed drill now, which is going to be 10 minutes, basically skimming what I read. The 20 minutes of reading I did, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes. I'm going to go back to the beginning of that chapter, and I'm going to skim through all the text I previously read in half the time. Now, you might have read a shorter chapter. Maybe it's only 12 minutes of reading. Okay, then a 6-minute drill. Maybe you read a short article that's 4 minutes to read. All right, then my drill is going to be 2. You can even do those drills with Accelerator. Now, as far as storing goes, again, check out the website for let me just put a link here, because if you're looking for more advanced courses, and I'm going to give you some free content as well here. If you go to irisreading.com/courses, that's where you can find our more advanced courses. And also, if you want a free book, I can send it to you. This a PDF of this book. If you like the articles we read earlier, shoot me an email. And the articles are all extracted from this book. The author has given us permission to freely distribute the PDF of his book. It's a great read. It's quick. It's like 100 pages in length, and it's on the topic of focus. Just shoot me an email. My email is paul@irisreading.com, and I'll make sure I reply with that content. I'll just reply with the PDF. Like I said, if you want to check out the advanced courses on speed reading, comprehension strategies, maximizing memory, note taking, we have a course on unique ways to take notes, and also how to be more productive. If you go to the website and you enter the code Paul, which is my name, you'll get 30% off. Actually, we have another course also on how to remember names more effectively if you're interested in that. So again, just use my name, Paul, and it'll give you an extra discount on top of any kind of discounts we may have on the site. I've got my contact information on the final slide here, but don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube down below if you're watching this on YouTube. And I've got my contact information on here in case you want to connect by email, by LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a connection request. It's this link right here. Or if you want to follow me on Instagram, I've got all the information right there. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join me on this session. I hope you found it helpful. If you like what we're doing at IRIS and you want us to come to your company or organization or your school, shoot me an email and we'll try to organize something there for a group, whether it's in person or whether it's a session like this over Zoom or wherever. Thank you so much for coming. If you like what we're doing at IRIS, please tell your friends about us. And if you don't like what we're doing, tell your enemies about us. But thank you so much for coming and have a great rest of the day. Take care.